Welcome to SuperTalk, the podcast that scratches your superhero itch. Just two suburban dads nerding out over superhero stuff on the small screen and the big. Buckle up, people. Enjoy the ride.
Greg have to have it low last week or something?
Moving it around back here. We're back, YouTube. Good episode about Loki today. We got some great theories, good stuff, inside stuff.
That's all coming from him because I have no theories and no inside stuff. So here we go.
You're going to tell me you're not going to mention Mephisto.
Who?
Let's get this party started. Ready? 3, 2.
Welcome to Super Talk, the weekly podcast dedicated to news and reviews of comic book media on the big and small screen. This is episode number 24. I'm your host, Brian Professor Pettis, and with me, as always, is my illustrious co-host, Titanium Tony Estrella. Titanium!
Professor, good to be back. Missed the Gregonator. Great guest last week, good show, but take us to school. Let's get this party started. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, finally some new media coming out that we get to review this week, so I think we're really excited. We both had a preponderous weekend with fish and golf and everything else, but we're not here to talk about fish and golf. We're here to talk about Loki, damn it.
Yes, we're going to get into Loki, and hopefully it was as good as we thought it was going to be, but we'll find out, shall we?
Yeah. Well, before we get started, we also always want to start by thanking our sponsor, Studio G Studio. Love these guys. They do give us a ton of support. We're going to put a link to their show, their YouTube page in our show notes, so please check them out. Like them, subscribe to them, click the notification bell. They got some new stuff that's coming out, so please help them out because they help us out.
Yeah, we love those crazy bastards. Good stuff. Yeah, they got a lot going on. Check them out and subscribe.
Thank you. And also, we want to thank our patrons, patreon.com/supertalk. These are the individual listeners who have chosen to support the show directly. They sign up, they donate $1 per episode, and now they're helping bring the show to you, the audience. So thank you for those of you who signed up. And I want to announce we are going to be doing a special giveaway to those who are on our patron list on patreon.com/supertalk. Episode 30, big milestone for us.
Yep.
Episode 30, we're going to make some announcements. We're also going to do a giveaway to all those patrons. So if you're interested in signing up, now's the time. Right before episode 30 is when we're going to be doing a big giveaway.
Yeah, help a brother out. That'd be awesome. Thank you so much to the guys that are, guys and gals, that are logged into Patreon. That's awesome. So thank you so much.
So let's get to it. We'll get to the news and review section. And first, foremost, and the thing that's on everybody's mind is we got last Wednesday the first episode of the Loki series on disneyplus.
Yep.
What'd you think?
I thought it was a setup episode. I thought it did what it was supposed to do. It's very inventive and it's intriguing, that's for sure. From what I can tell, it had over 100,000 more views than WandaVision or Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So that could just be a symptom of Disney Plus now increasing since their content is starting to come out. It could be a symptom of people are really excited about Loki. I was very excited about it. It didn't blow me away. But it was a very good episode, and man, you just, Professor, you can just feel that they're getting into phase 4, and this just kind of lights the fuse.
The number of Easter eggs that were in this episode is astounding. And again, there's these subtle references, there's kind of hard references to things. I don't know if they did it on purpose, if they did it by accident. I don't know if these are things that are in the plans for them going forward in the future, or if these are just things they're alluding to that may have happened in the past. I mean, they're just, again, what they have the ability to use this series for is exponential.
Yeah.
Like, they really are, it sounds like what they're doing right now is setting up a lot of things that we know are coming in phase 4.
Right.
We do know that Loki has been renewed for season 2 already.
Sure.
Now, does that mean a year or two from now when they're kind of ready to move into Phase 5, or kind of going through the end of Phase 4, they want to set up some other big series. Isn't Loki the best avenue to do that? Because we have this time travel slash, kind of universe expansion slash multiverse explainer type of thing that we
Right.
can use to do anything, really.
Well, you've said it 100 times, Professor. The cheat code is
Right.
Loki and the TVA. So I absolutely agree with you. We'll see. We'll see.
Well, let's kind of give a brief summary of what happened in the episode. We find out what happened to this version of Loki that we saw in Avengers Endgame, when Tony Stark went back in time and went to the fight in Manhattan against the Chitauri. They had defeated Loki,
Right.
and Iron Man goes back in time and steals the Tesseract with Ant-Man's help.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the Hulk ruins the day when he has to come down the stairs and doesn't get to take the elevator and knocks the Tesseract away. We see Loki pick it up and blink away in the movie, and we have no idea what happened to him. Well, now we found out what happened to him, right?
Yeah, that's where Loki starts, right? That's where it all begins.
They do
interesting. They added a couple of different angles to Endgame that weren't in Endgame, but they added it to Loki. I'm sure a lot of diehard fans got excited about that, but I was like, yeah, okay. So some of the edited stuff got added to Loki, which is cool, but okay.
Well, and as we talked about last week, this version of Loki was the Loki that had just attacked New York City.
Yeah.
And was the bad guy that was eventually taken back to Asgard to answer for his crimes.
Yeah.
And put to a cell.
His timeline was up to the point where he is still very evil. He's still coming to Earth to take over, and Midgard. He wants to rule Midgard,
Right.
which
So
is Earth.
he steals the Tesseract. It blinks him away. It takes him into the
Mugabe, Agabi, Wagabi, Wasabi desert.
Mojave Desert.
That sounds
The
good
Gobi
enough.
Desert.
The Gobi Desert. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. The Gobi Desert.
In Mongolia or something, and he blinks and falls into the sand, and you can see his chains that he was being locked up with are kind of off of him now, and
Very reminiscent of when Iron Man, kind of his
Similar.
first Iron Man suit,
Yeah.
flew up and he got plastered into the sand. It kind of reminded me of that.
very
you know?
similar. But he pops up and confronts some of the locals, telling them that hey, you're now my subjects, and they're like, what? And then we see the TVA show up to apprehend him because
Apprehend him.
he is a variant.
Yeah,
He
that's
is-
what they call people that create a nexus event in the timeline, right?
Right, and they create an alternate timeline that never would have existed had they kept on the path that they were designed to be on.
Right.
This wouldn't have happened. Well, the TVA shows up. Hey, wait a minute, you deviated. You grabbed the Tesseract and blinked away, and now
Right.
you've deviated.
Yeah, and which kind of weird for me is that he wouldn't have deviated from that if the Avengers hadn't gone back in time and tried to steal it. So I guess we have an answer to that later on. But anyway, I don't blame him.
Yeah, and he goes. So he gets apprehended. He's completely taken to task by the TVA watchmen. They basically beat him up pretty easily and didn't take him in.
Glorious purpose.
Yeah. But then he gets processed. The processing into the TVA was kind of funny, where his clothes get stripped off. This is fine Asgardian leather, and that all happens.
Yeah, the machine.
Some of the things that we had seen in the previews.
Yeah. Is that a Flurgan? The cat?
Yeah, it must be.
It has to be, right?
Right.
It's so cool.
That's why anytime you see a cat in a Marvel property now, you're thinking it's going to have like these tentacles that are coming out of its mouth or whatever, swallows anything.
The cat from Captain Marvel.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, the one that scratched Nick Fury's eye as well and took one of his eyes out.
Right.
But anyway, we get him seeing process through, and we learn about the TVA and who they are and why they were put into place. There's now this group of 3 individuals called the Timekeepers.
Yeah.
And they're responsible for watching over what's called the sacred timeline.
Yeah.
Because we said before they came into existence, before the TVA was formed, there were all these different realities, and they were fighting. There was a multi-reality war.
Right. A
And
multiverse war.
a war between the multiverses that caused them to clash and fight to find out who was going to be the most dominant reality,
right.
dominant timeline. And so to avoid that war from happening again, they created the TVA, and they said there's going to be one timeline, and we're going to watch over it and make sure that there's no deviations and no other timelines get created from it.
Right.
So that we understand why they've been created.
Which for me, that was probably one of the coolest parts of the show.
Right.
The missed minutes and the way they did the animation to explain how and why he's there and what the TVA is all about. I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was kind of cool. And it really, to be honest with you, even though it was like old school animation, it kept my attention. You know, maybe I'm just a simple guy, you know, I don't know. MODOK is a little much for me, maybe. I don't know. But I thought that was really cool. I thought that was my favorite part of the show, was Miss Minutes explaining the whole TVA and how that happened. So the timeline that they created, the multiverses are in that timeline, but they're all on the same timeline?
I think the way they explained it is there is no multiverse at the moment because the TVA is preventing a multiverse from existing.
Right.
So,
Okay.
So the way that I understand it so far is there used to be a multiverse, there used to be multiple timelines, but the TVA came in and made sure that there was one timeline, the sacred timeline. So you remember the explainer that the Ancient One gave to Bruce Banner back in Avengers Endgame when he came to take the Time Stone from her. She said, well, if you do this, it'll create another reality, to create an alternate timeline. And he's like, well, not if we bring it back and put it back in the right place, right? The same time it left it, we'll put it right back.
Correct.
And so what the TVA is doing is when these alternate timelines get created, they're coming in, swooping in, and correcting what went wrong and erasing that timeline that was created.
With reset charges. So, by the way, SuperTalk guys, YouTube buddies of ours, very loyal fans of ours, were asking what that thing was called. It's called a reset charge. They were asking, what's that thing called? They couldn't. Yeah. It's a reset charge, which is cool.
Yeah, so every time they go and they take the variant that created the Nexus event, that created the new timeline, they take the variant into their possession.
Yeah.
Then they put the reset charge down, and it would basically wipe that reality that was created, the alternate reality that was created, from existence.
Yeah.
So from my understanding is, the multiverse doesn't exist right now.
Okay.
Right now. Now, which is kind of strange because, you know, the Ancient One explained to Stephen Strange when he was in Karmatage, that there was a multiverse, that there are multiple realities, and there are different dimensions, and all these other things. And so now the TVA's explaining, well, no, there aren't anymore. So I think that's something that we're going to kind of, and my guess is a lot of what's happening in Loki and a lot of what is going to happen through the series is creating some of the backdrop for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
Right.
Then what happens in the series creates alternate realities, which creates a multiverse. This multiverse has some maddening things going on,
yeah.
And it's setting up some craziness that Doctor Strange needs to help fix.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the way it's going to go, which would be kind of cool. But well, we'll get into it a little bit later. But another question that I've gotten and I have myself is that the person, the antagonist throughout the show, I won't say who it is yet. If there are no multiverses, then where did they come from? So that's my issue. It's like, did they come from? They had to have come from another multiverse, and they're messing with the sacred timeline, obviously, and going through the Minutemen.
Well, we hear Mobius, who is the other character we were introduced, Owen Wilson's character.
Did he steal the show?
Oh, he's great. He's fantastic.
Awesome.
He's perfect. By the way, the actor with one of the most messed up noses in the history of acting. Like everybody in my family was like, "What's wrong with his nose?" I'm like, "He's always had a messed up nose."
Yeah, that's his calling card.
Yeah, right. My wife's like, "Good thing he never fixed it because he wouldn't be Owen Wilson if he didn't have it." Right?
Absolutely.
But he was great. But you heard some questions that you and I both had when Loki was being interviewed by Judge Renslayer. He said, "Why aren't you going after the Avengers? They're the ones who went back in time.
Right.
They're the ones who are messing with the timeline. They're the ones that you guys should be going after." As a matter of fact, put together a team. I'll go after them with you. And she said, "No, what they did was supposed to happen.
Right.
What you did was not supposed to happen."
Correct.
And he's like, "According to who?"
Right.
Right? According to whom? Who is creating this? Who is the judge and jury? And the way she explained it was, well, he's like, who are the timekeepers? Where are the timekeepers? We'd like to talk to them. Well, they're busy, dictating the proper timeline. And he's like, well, who are you? I'm the person dictating the proper timeline according to their dictations, right? So very confusing, right?
Yeah.
Who are these people? Who gave them the authority to do this? Why are they doing it?
Yeah.
They obviously have a lot of power, a lot of technology at their disposal.
Yeah, I love the '70s old school technology.
Yeah.
Like you're like back in a Flash Gordon ship.
Right.
It's like advanced, but it looks like it's from the '60s.
Right.
It's very cool.
Well, and theoretically, the TVA is set up at the end of time. So when this timeline ends officially, that's where the TVA sits. They kind of sit in this like version
Pocket.
of limbo, this
Right.
pocket universe that's at the end of time. So they've, as Morbius explained, we've seen everything that's happened and that's going to happen.
Right.
Like we've seen it all already. We're just now here to make sure that it all happens according to plan, the way it's supposed to, right? But anyway, we find out a bunch of things in the show. We find out that the person that is attacking the TVA Minutemen
Right.
and killing the TVA Minutemen is a version of Loki.
Yeah.
That's a variant that
Yeah.
escaped
Mhm.
and is running rampant through different timelines.
Yeah, Morbius tells Loki that I need your help stopping this very dangerous variant who is you.
That's another variant of Loki.
I think it's female.
The female Loki, yeah.
I think so.
You sure it's not Black Widow?
I'm positive it's not Black Widow now. I guess there was a shot, a photo shot, an on-set shot of the female Loki in her costume, and she had gloves on that were missing fingers. And then when she goes after the dropping the fire and the oil scene, she goes to pick up the reset charge, and it's those same gloves that she was wearing in that photo.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely her.
Yeah, and she and Tom Hiddleston, the actress that plays her, and Tom Hiddleston were both
At
at
the premiere.
the London premiere together.
She's kind of a smoke show.
I'm sure she is.
Yeah, she's a smoke show.
But they were at the London premiere together, so we understand as that character is going to be big in the show. It's not just a one-time, So I agree with you. That's probably who the antagonist is, and we don't know that yet. So
Professor, can I rewind you for a
Yeah.
second? Let me rewind you back to Miss Minutes when she's talking about this multiverse war. Could she be talking about Secret Wars?
of course.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the big. That was one of the big Easter eggs that potentially was dropped in the show.
During
Is that-
Miss Minutes' little
So
cartoon.
there are two versions of Marvel Secret Wars that in comic history, right? There is the Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars from the '80s that, as we explained, I think a few episodes ago, was created by the Hasbro toy company in combination with Marvel to promote a toy line.
Right.
They created this Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars storyline, and it was the first multi-issue crossover event in comic book history.
Yeah.
And it was created for Hasbro so they could sell toys. That was the story with the Beyonder.
Yeah.
So there was a character called the Beyonder who created this thing called Battle World, and he wanted to test Earth's heroes. And he took all of Earth's heroes and all of Earth's villains and put them on this thing called Battle World and made them fight each other. And that's where Spider-Man got his black costume and all those other things we explained before.
Yeah.
That was the first version of Secret Wars. The second version of Secret Wars was a multiverse war. It was a war of the multiverses, of the different realities. And they were fighting each other to see who would come
be
out
the
on
main,
top, who would
right.
become the main. And that's where we had the Thor Corps.
Right.
And the Council of Reeds, and there's
Yes.
all these things that we've seen or heard about before.
The Council of Reeds was Reed Richards
Versions
and
of-
all of Reed Richards' versions of himself that were
From
completely
different
different
realities.
from different realities, like formed a group,
Right.
Right, like a think tank. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, boy band. So they, but that's where we had a lot, and that Secret Wars was a war between realities and the war between the multiverses, and
Which is mentioned. That's right.
and again, that's the big Easter egg. Is that what they were talking about?
Right.
So the question was, well, how are they referring to that if it's never happened or hasn't happened yet?
Yeah. It
Well,
might
hang on
have-
a second. Who says it hasn't? According to where they sit, it may have already happened, but
or
not
may not.
for us.
Right. Might not have happened.
But it might happen. So in the timeline that Loki was plucked out of, the war that they're talking about that created that founded the TVA may happen 50 years from then, 20 years from then, 10 years from that point in time. Because again, they've seen everything that's already happened, and they've seen everything that will happen. So this could be a war that happens 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So they're referring to something that created the TVA that may not have happened yet according to our time, but may have happened already according to all the time they're aware of already.
Yes.
So that's the one of the huge Easter eggs that was dropped in the show, where they're referring to Secret Wars, and we've always said that that could be one of the next big character crossover events that they're going to have in the movies, just like they did with Infinity War. Are they going to have Marvel Secret Wars? And that could be what happens.
That'd be cool.
And if you think about it, all these movies they have on the slate for Phase 4, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
We've got
Spider-Man No Way Home.
No Way Home, Quantum Mania.
Which we have a lot of characters in that could be from different multiverses. So
Quantum Mania. These are things, with Kang the Conqueror. These are things that could explain
so
how...
Kang is sweet on the judge, right?
In the comics?
Yes.
Yes, but she's not a judge of the TVA in the comics.
Oh,
she's just a princess, I think. Her name is Dr. Renslayer, but she's has nothing to do with the TVA.
She's Judge Renslayer in the show.
Right.
And she's kind of a smoke show too. And I think
But didn't you
Mobius was
see
kind of
that-
hitting on. Yeah.
Yeah, did
I
you see
saw
that they were alluding to
There was
maybe
sexual tension. I'm just saying
there was a little
sexual
maybe a
tension.
relationship between them already?
I
He's
seem
like
to always
he
be
walks up
talking
to he's like I always seem to be looking up to you, which seems fitting, or something like that, right?
She's a smoke show.
Yeah.
That'd be cute. He's such a great actor, man. Did he steal the show? It was damn close, but man, Tom Hiddleston, he put on
So
a
good.
great. He's so good.
Well, and I think one of the biggest parts of the movie, one of the things we alluded to last week, was that, again, this version of Loki's the bad Loki, the Loki that attacked New York, the Loki that just got thrashed all over the place by the Hulk, and he hadn't gone through the redemption story of, that happened in Thor and the Dark World.
Help avenge his mother against the Dark Elves,
right,
and things like that.
He didn't go through what happened in Avengers Endgame and Ragnarok and all that.
Where he helped defeat,
and he became really close with his brother and all this other thing. We haven't seen all of that,
no.
right? And
he tried to kill Thanos and then ends up dying. Well, but he does see it later at the TVA. He goes through the film and he sees it, and you can see it and change a little bit.
Well, what was the other thing that was huge in this episode that we realized is that in the TVA, in this little pocket universe that they have, there are no magical powers. Because he tried to use his magical powers, and it was like, flinching, and didn't happen. So that magical powers don't work. Things like Infinity Stones, the Tesseract, all these other things, when they come to this place, they no longer have any power or any because they opened up the drawer of the guy who was collecting evidence, and they had all these Infinity Gems sitting there. Oh yeah, people use them as paperweights. They have no power there.
Paperweights,
right?
And that shocked him. Like, are you kidding me?
Because he had grabbed the Tesseract, and he's like, oh, maybe I'll be able to use it to get back to where I was. And he's like, I've tried a million times. It just doesn't work. Right?
No, nothing works.
Yeah.
And there were a ton of Infinity Stones in the drawer.
Right.
And he's like, oh, we get a lot of those. Those must be from the different timelines, right? From different multiverses.
Realities or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But they don't work outside of their own reality.
Right.
So that's none of it works there at the TVA, which is another big, interesting piece of information. So when he realizes he has no way out of where he is, nowhere to go, he goes back into the room and watches the film. He kind of goes through his, and Morbius has already seen all this. He knows that
he studied
that there is good in his character. That's why he was asking all these questions. Why did you want to be king of the earth? Why not king of space? Isn't that even more? That would be kind of cool. And so, do you like hurting people? And he knew that there was good in this Loki. He knew that Loki had a redemption arc that he had gone through. He was trying to get it out of him
quicker.
And Loki did. He
Yeah.
did. He watched basically his.
Morbius confirmed it. You do know who you are.
He did. He watched his life happen. He watched the rest of his life happen.
And he was disappointed that there was no glorious purpose. Like his life ends at a crack of the neck by Thanos, and disappointing.
Well, but he did see his mother die. He did see the redemption arc that he went on. He did see him and his brother working together to fight his sister. He did see, the fact that he gave his life to potentially help in Endgame, or Infinity War, and I think it shocked him. But the other realization he came to was, I can't leave.
Right.
this version of me will never exist outside of the TVA. He realized I can't go home. I can't go back to my reality because in my reality, I'm dead.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm gone.
Right.
So I can't go back. So he realized that, and he also realized, you know what? At the end, I did the right thing, but that version of me is dead. I can't go back, but maybe I can do some good, or whatever. So I think he figured that out on his own. So the redemption arc he went through in a few films, we saw in basically 15 minutes of the TV show,
a couple
right?
of seconds.
And it shocked him. He was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
It really did throw him for a loop,
And just his range of emotions and his acting skills through that really was convincing. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
It was a good show. I mean, I liked it a lot. So
it was. Here's my critique. It was slow at times, very slow.
Mhm.
It was, to your point, a setup episode. They really didn't do much.
Yeah.
We did. They did introduce this vagabond version of Loki, who's going to be the antagonist in the show, as you can imagine. And he or she, we think it's a she, is stealing those reset devices that the
reset charges.
charge. She's stolen a couple of them.
Yes.
Right, and so she's either using them or plans to use them somehow, some way.
Yeah. So the future tech that she left in the cornfield that brought the Minutemen.
The shovel. It was like it was
like some kind of shovel.
It was a shovel that had something. Yeah, and the Minuteman said, "Oh, it's somebody that had stolen something from 3,000 years in the future and brought it here just to piss us off, or just to steal some oil and get rich." Right? Yeah.
That was weird. We never explained what that device was. It must not have been.
But he or she used that to lure them there, knowing that they would come if she had put it there.
Yes.
Right.
And it was effective. I think it's a she.
Yeah.
I think it's a she. But anyway, I think.
Well, we hear again. The critics have seen episode 2, and we hear that once we get through episode 2, okay, now we get it. We know where the show's going. We know what's happening, and hopefully we get some idea of what the show's going to be about.
So Tom Hiddleston on social media said that his favorite episodes, the ones that really get him, are 4 and 5.
I heard it was 3 and 4. He said.
I thought it was 4 and 5.
Yeah.
3 and 4?
Yeah, I heard it was 3 and 4.
Okay. I thought it was 4 and 5.
So very similar to what happened in WandaVision, like the first.
Right.
So think of the first 2 episodes of Loki being 1, 2, 3, and 4 of WandaVision, where they're basically going through the different decades.
Right.
And if you remember when we got through that, and then we got into episodes 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 of WandaVision, that's where we understood.
Well, we got a lot of answers. Questions were kind of
Sword,
fulfilled.
what Sword was doing,
Yeah.
and that's where Monica Rambeau was thrown out of the TV area and everything. So we got a little bit, and that's where Darcy shows up and all this other stuff. So we got a lot of that in those episodes. I think what he said was 3 and 4. 1 and 2 are kind of like get you going. 3 and 4 are incredibly meaningful, and they give a lot of clues about what's going to be happening in the show.
I can't wait. Well, they've already showed 1 and 2 to certain people, like Brandon Davis from comicbook.com. He's seen 1 and 2, and he says that he won't give anything away, but 2's really good. It's a little bit better than 1, but he still's got a lot of questions, and so you might be right. So maybe it is 3 and 4. I thought it was 4 and 5 that he had said really will blow you away and really get you hooked on.
But this is going to be some interesting timing because the episode 7 and 8, Black Widow comes out right between them. So we get episode 7, and then 2 days later, Black Widow comes out, and episode 8, the finale of Loki, will be right after after Black Widow the movie comes out.
So let me ask you this: how many episodes of Loki are there?
8.
Okay, there are 8.
Right.
Okay, I thought there were 6, but there are 8.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're right. Yeah, that would put us after Black Widow, right? Because Black Widow comes out July 9th. Are we going Friday night, or when are we going?
We'll have to figure that out.
Yeah, I'd like to go Friday night.
Well, hang on a second. So wait a minute. Maybe it is 6 of Loki. I know. So what I know is, I thought I looked this up.
I thought the last show. The reason why the last show will end Wednesday before the 9th, and then we get Black Widow. I don't know why they would put. Well, maybe
no.
they do.
So there are 6 episodes of Loki.
Okay.
So we get episode 2 this Wednesday, the 15th.
Okay.
Episode 3 will be the 22nd. Episode 4, the 29th.
Uh-huh.
Episode 5, the one before the finale, is July 6th. July 9th is when Black Widow comes out.
Uh-huh.
And then the finale of Loki will be the 13th, the week after.
The week after Black Widow.
Black Widow comes
Wow.
out. So we're going to get Black Widow in between the second to last and last episode of Loki.
Wow. That's going to be a big podcast for us.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
gonna
I
be
don't
awesome.
think we'll need a topic of the week that week.
No, I don't think so.
We'll have plenty to talk about. But yeah, I think overall, I'm looking forward to the rest of this. I mean, they did drop a bunch of Easter eggs in this, and hopefully we get some more answers behind some of those going forward. But hey, look.
Any theories? Do you have any theories?
I think this show is, yes, I think ultimately we're going to find out that the TVA is bad and not good.
I'm not saying this because we're here together. We haven't talked about Loki at all all. We haven't talked about it at all. And that is my same theory.
Yeah. I think eventually we're going to find out that the TVA, the organization, is
Trying to control time.
doing something that shouldn't be done, that nobody should be doing, and the version of Loki that is trying to fight them and disturb them, who Mobius is going after, is doing what somebody should be doing to them and is trying to bring them down because what they're doing is wrong.
Got it.
And is there somebody in charge of the TVA who may be pulling the strings? Possibly. And I'll kind of allude to that maybe as when we get to our topic of the week this week, that it may be an explainer.
Okay.
It may explain some things that are happening in some future movies as well. But I don't know if it's a single entity that's doing this or if it is this group of time, lizards that
Old lizards?
Yeah.
That's awesome, the way he calls them.
Yeah. But I do think ultimately we'll find out that the TVA is bad. And now even people like Mobius may already know it.
Right. Or maybe not.
Well, that was one interesting part when, Loki's like, I'm going to burn this place to the ground. He goes, I'll show you my desk. You can start there. Right? And then he said, well, this is a nightmare. He goes, no, that's a different department. You can start there, actually. As a matter of fact, I'll help you.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that he knows, that Mobius knows the TVA is not right, and that Mobius knows that something's wrong, and he's using this version of Loki to help him get to the other version of Loki so that they can work together to bring it down together. So I think we're going to find out eventually that Mobius has known about this all along, and he's been trying to help do this from inside, but he needed help from somebody from the outside to do it because he couldn't do it himself.
Right.
And that's where you got to use Loki. So I figured that might be a big theory.
That's a great theory. That is right on par with what I was going to say. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot to look forward to. And again, I think that there's a great premiere. I think it did what it's supposed to. I didn't expect some major big cliffhangers or anything. I just said, okay, here it is. Just set up the plot. Tell us what the show's going to be about. And again, I expect it to be great because Tom Hiddleston's great. Owen Wilson's great. I mean, it was just going to be good.
I'm shocked that they revealed the antagonist so early. I thought that they would at least take 2 or 3 episodes before they revealed that it was another Loki that was causing all the problems. I thought that was cool that they didn't want us to, wait on it. And the picture of the devil up on the
stained glass?
Stained glass of the devil when the little girl said that person did it. And the show, the front runner for the show, the writer, the producer of the show, came out immediately and said, no, it was no reference to Mephisto. It was none whatsoever. We actually did the show before all that controversy came out. So I thought that was cool, and I didn't think it was anyway. I think the horns is what the little girl's referring to. And one more question. The gum. Does she leave the gum to alter the reality, or what's up with the gum, the blue gum?
So he called it, Mobius called it, the devil comes bearing gifts.
Yes.
And they took the gum with them. If you remember when Loki was going through I would call it a metal detector, right? And it was when he was asked, are you a human being with a soul, or are you? And he's like, if I were a robot, how would I even know, right? And then, but when he went through that, they took there's a picture that came out of that device. And
Polaroid.
It was a Polaroid. And he said, "What is that?" He said, "It's your time aura or something like that." It was
what did he call it?
Temporal aura.
Temporal aura, yes.
And he's like, "What's that?" He goes, "Oh, we'll get into it later." Well, when Owen Wilson took the gum from the kid, he said, well, let's scan this for temporal aura. So he's basically, if any device that's touched by somebody, you're going to leave your temporal aura on it. So he wanted to find out, is it the same person who left this gum that's been going to these other places too? So I don't think there's any significance to the actual gum itself, but it was more of they took it to show that, Loki, the other version of Loki, bribed the kid using the gum.
Yeah. I've seen in the trailer another wrapper for that same type of gum, so I'm just wondering. It'd be kind of cool. That's just a question I have. I hope they answer some of that. They might not. The device that was left behind is another question, but I think it's insignificant. I think
the shovel?
Yeah, I know. I'm obsessed with certain things.
The temporal shovel, right?
Temporal shovel.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Right. Well, let's get back into the other news for the week. So we
finished out with Loki, people. Episode 1. Join us for episode 2. We're gonna get every show. We're gonna be talking about each episode.
All right, we'll talk about each episode.
You gotta walk me through the show notes because I didn't have time to look at them.
So we did get some new footage from Marvel in regards to Black Widow. As you asked me earlier, are we going to the theaters? I said, well, of course we're going to the theaters.
Yeah.
They did announce the pre-sale for Black Widow movie tickets is now happening, and they released literally like the first, I don't know, it's like a 30 to 45 second clip of the fight scene between Elena Belova and Natasha when they meet each other, and then all the other Black Widows come after them.
Oh.
In their apartment.
Oh boy.
Yeah, they showed like 30 to 45 seconds of that. It was really, really good.
Didn't watch it.
And them getting away. So they did that to promote the pre-sale of the movie.
Nice.
And that is up now. You can go buy tickets if you want to go see this movie July 9th in the movie theaters.
That's why I asked you.
We should do that after the show.
Well, it's kind of a social media kind of trend right now. People taking screenshots of where they're sitting with their theater seats for Black Widow. So it's kind of cool. But yeah, I want to get our tickets.
All right, well, we'll do that right after the show. That'll be part of the tickets and
so
tickets and transactions part of the show.
Awesome. We are in Virginia, and the state of the emergency is going to be lifted at the end of June 28th or something like that. So hopefully the pandemic has kind of dwindled down to a small roar. If those people in my neighborhood would please. You can get closer than 6 feet now, according to everything. So stop walking down the middle of the street in large groups, 6 feet apart. It's dangerous, and I will hit you and run you over, and I don't care. So little bitch session there for that. But yeah, so I'm expecting July 9th for in the theater to be wide open, no masks, and I think it'll be a good time. So.
Yeah, I could not wait. So that I literally,
what I do when the movie comes out and they start releasing these last minute trailers and stuff, I shut it down because I don't want to see any more than what I've already seen. So I'm not going to watch that, but it sounds really cool.
Unfortunately, I think this movie has suffered through so many delays that they need to keep feeding us a little bit. And I mean, we're going to watch the movie in the theaters and have seen probably half of it by the time the movie
That's why I'm shutting it down. I don't want to see any new footage.
I know. We were excited, though. I was talking to my son Charlie last week, and we were watching Loki, the first episode, and I said, Charlie, Black Widow comes out 4 weeks from Friday. 4 weeks.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, yeah, we get 4. Yeah, it's 4 weeks from Friday we get the movie. So really, really excited about that, to go not only see this movie finally, but see it in the theaters. And hopefully get a full Eternals trailer. Hopefully get a Spider-Man, No Way Home trailer.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good call. We'll have to take bets. Our next episode, let's take bets and which way, what trailer we're gonna get. That'd be fun.
Okay. Next piece of news. You got some news about Aquaman, right?
Yeah, they came out with. I sent you that Aquaman 2.
They gave us a title for the movie, right?
Yeah, The Lost Kingdom.
Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom.
Yeah.
So you have any idea what they're referring to there?
James Woo, the director of that, posted that on social media. I have no idea. I imagine it is, I don't know. It can't be a flashback because both the main stars are already adult in it, so I don't know what could be.
Well, isn't Atlantis referred to the lost kingdom of Atlantis?
Yes.
Right. So, but what could they be
They
talking?
can't do an origin story because
Right.
what would the two characters be?
And maybe they're talking about
Jason Momoa is
some way bringing
wasn't
Atlantis
there.
back out from underneath the water or something. I have no idea.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah,
That kind of threw me for a little bit, right? The title of that.
and I don't think we should read too much into it before we know a little bit more about it.
I agree.
So,
I
and so do any news about when that's starting, or any idea about?
No.
No, nothing.
Mm-mm,
Okay.
nothing.
And then we got another casting, so a character that we knew was coming to the She-Hulk series. We knew the big bad in the She-Hulk series was going to be a character, Titania, but that role was cast this week. An actress named Jamila Jamil
Yeah.
was cast as Titania in the She-Hulk series.
She's on that show,
Good Place?
The Good Place.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a star on that show, The Good Place, smoke show. Do you know anything about the character? in the
Titania?
comics?
Yeah, we talked about it. So she was, frankly, somebody that was created in Secret Wars by Dr.
Doom. Yeah.
He created these two female characters, Titania. I can't remember the other one. But he gave them powers, and she's just a super strong person.
Yeah.
To help kind of bolster his team of individuals in
used, like,
Secret Wars.
Yeah, some kind of technology.
Yeah, that he does. Yeah. So
But she's super strong and has stamina and
Yeah.
is strong as She-Hulk, just not green and bulky, right?
she's
So we say.
big and strong, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That'll be cool. And we know the Abomination is in it. Tim Roth has been.
it's come back, and
confirmed as
we
the
know
Bruce Banner will be in
Mark
it.
Ruffalo's going to be there.
Mark Ruffalo will be in there.
We know that for sure.
Yeah.
Is this going to be an origin story for She-Hulk, the character? Maybe. In the comic books, she gets her powers through a blood transfusion with her brother. Cousin,
Yeah.
cousin, who is Bruce Banner.
Yeah.
She's receives a blood transfusion to
Yeah.
kind of save her life. And the fact that they're related, I mean, it was one of those things where he's the only one that can do it.
Yeah.
He has a special blood type, and he's like, I
Yeah.
can't. You know what happens if she gets my blood?
Yeah.
But he ends up saving her life, but creates the She-Hulk.
Yeah. And now it's supposed to be a courtroom comedy. I've heard that several times
You
now.
told me that, and I was like, I don't see.
I keep seeing that. I keep seeing, and that's been confirmed, I think. A courtroom comedy, which would be great. It'd be a great departure. Mark Ruffalo has some great comedic chops.
Well, and he's supposedly going to be Professor Hulk in that, because that's what he is in the MCU right now. He's
Yeah.
Professor Hulk, so he'll be the smart, big green Hulk,
Yeah.
guy that we saw in Endgame. That's who he's going to be in She-Hulk.
So I put out on Reddit the other day that I'd really like to see Hulk get back to his origins. Like, he seems to get his ass kicked a lot. Like, he's not as dominating. I want to see him in a situation where he's completely dominating and he gets so enraged that he actually grows and gets bigger and gets stronger. And we just haven't seen that yet. So I don't know. That's just my little tidbit.
Your little
there.
rant?
My little
Hulk rant?
Sorry, that's my Hulk rant. Yeah, I like that.
But you also had another rumor about the Hulk, the She-Hulk series, that we may see Hulk's son, Skaar, show up in the She-Hulk series.
Skaar, yeah.
In a courtroom comedy, really.
And I'm telling you, that is a rumor. I threw that in there, and I made sure I put rumor in front of that because when Hulk was on the planet Skara, what's the planet where Skaar, the Thor Ragnarok, right? That show, when he was there, apparently he got jiggy with somebody, and they had a kid, and this kid comes to Earth looking for dad. It would be funny if he comes to Earth on behalf of his mother looking for, like, alimony or something, Like,
Well, it is a courtroom comedy.
It is a courtroom
So,
comedy.
so his cousin, the She-Hulk, could be representing him in the palimony suit that his extra-dimensional, we'll say, special woman sent her, the son that they bore together to go find him. Yeah, that would be kind of funny.
But apparently he's got, he's like Hulk. He's got the powers and
He's
a little bit different, right?
a little different, but yeah, he's, good character.
It's a rumor. We'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see what happens.
And then we did get I don't know if you saw this, Titanium. We did get a a screenshot of Jensen Ackles in his Soldier Boy uniform for
The Boys.
season 3.
I did see that. Yeah.
So they did kind of take a little bit of a departure from the comics there.
Right.
In
it was
the,
more military.
well,
like
in the
army.
but much more. I'll say it, a more blatant ripoff of Captain America.
Okay.
So the Boys
comics.
comics,
Yeah.
in the Boys comics, Soldier Boy's uniform was red, white, and blue, like, you know, just almost a blatant ripoff of Captain America. And I think what they did in the screen, when we saw the screenshot, showed the new costume is green based, and you can still see it's militant, but it's
like
green.
a military.
And I think that they did it so that Marvel wouldn't come sue the living crap out of it, basically.
Right now, that's probably a good idea, but
Right.
to be safer than sorry. But I think it looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
He's super excited about
Yeah,
it.
he
He's
totally
all
is.
over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't wait for that show.
Oh, yeah,
gonna be
and
so
that's coming
good.
out later this summer, right?
August.
August?
August. I can't wait.
It's going to be so good.
Yeah.
I mean, man, talk about stuff that we'll have to talk about.
Yeah,
Man, that's crazy.
Like Invincible, that was
yeah, really
it's
good.
a good run.
All right, well, I did want to, I know we alluded to this last week, so we had our special guest, Greg Beyer, last week, ask some questions
Thank
about.
you, Greg, for coming on. I know
Yeah,
you're listening.
that
Thank
was
you
great.
so much. It was awesome.
But I wanted to bring our topic of the week this week and talk about Kang the Conqueror. So there are some rumors that Kang the Conqueror, or a version of Kang the Conqueror, is involved with or potentially is in charge of the TVA that we're seeing now in the Loki series.
Okay. All
So
right.
there's people out there saying, well, we know who's been cast. Jonathan Majors, actor, has been cast as Kang the Conqueror in the Quantumania movie.
the Ant-Man
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Ant-Man and the Wasp of Quantumanium. He is going to be the big bad Kang the Conqueror.
And so they're like, well, we know he's been cast, and if you look at the center cartoon version of the Timekeepers, you know, it kind of looks like Kang the Conqueror if it were Jonathan Majors, and maybe that's the person who is one of the Timekeepers.
Yeah.
And there's some theories about that, but
Especially the wooden statue behind.
that she sits right in front of,
Yeah.
the judge.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely does. And there's some theories that that's actually who that individual timekeeper is.
Interesting.
But I did want to explain that because there is a version of Kang the Conqueror who was working for the Timekeepers at one point in time. We'll kind of get into that. But I wanted to explain who Kang the Conqueror is.
Yes.
And as I mentioned last week, probably one of the most confusing and most complex characters in the history of Marvel Comics. And so there's no way that I can effectively explain each and every iteration of this character completely. The character has shown up in one form or fashion at multiple times across multiple different titles, Fantastic Four, Avengers, a bunch of different things. And it's really a complex story, but I'll kind of try to explain it in a way that I think the MCU might be going with this character.
Well, I think you're right on with that. I think the MCU is going to box this character in so that novice and fanboys like ourselves, mega geeks like ourselves, will appreciate. Because from what you've told me about Kang the Conqueror, if they try to develop that character in the MCU, people will be lost and they will lose interest. I mean, he's too complex, too like all over the place.
Yeah, so I kind of explained the origins and kind of where he comes
for it.
from, and kind of some of the journeys he's been on in his character and how he became Kang the Conqueror.
Yeah.
But I won't get into like all the different. As I mentioned last week, this is a character that kind of has the ability to traverse different timelines and different times, and kind of is out of time at the same time. Like, since he can exist in multiple, he's run into himself in different versions of himself in the past, which is kind of strange. But anyway, Nathaniel Richards is the character. So we mentioned last week, Nathaniel Richards is the name of the character that is or eventually becomes Kang the Conqueror. Nathaniel Richards was born in the 31st century of an alternate Earth, right? And so this is an Earth that never went through...
Not 616.
No, it's like 6199 or something
yeah.
like that. But it's an alternate version of Earth. This version of Earth never went through the Dark Ages, and technology blossomed and bloomed much quicker, and it was a war-ravaged Earth. And a time-traveling hero came to this version of Earth in the 31st century. His name was Nathaniel Richards, a different Nathaniel Richards. And it happened to be Reed Richards' father from our Earth. figured out a way to travel in time and went to this Earth in the 31st century and was able to save it and stop war and became the savior of the timeline. And so this Nathaniel Richards said, I think I'm related to this person, and he is. And so he's like, wow, wouldn't it be great if I could figure out a way to travel through time and become a savior as well? So he ends up finding technology that was developed by Dr. Doom and is able to figure out a way to travel in time and goes back in time and goes back to ancient Egypt and installs himself as Pharaoh Rama-Tut.
Cool.
So he creates this persona, and of course he's coming from the 31st century.
Right.
He knows way more about technology and science and health and everything else than anybody does in ancient Egypt, and he brought a lot of technology with him. Right. So he installs himself as Pharaoh and rules over ancient Egypt. The reason he goes back there is he wants to identify and recruit Apocalypse, right, who existed back then. It was a character, I can't remember what Apocalypse was called back, Ensaba Nur, or whatever was the character's name in ancient Egypt. Wants to recruit him as his successor. Uh-huh. Well, the Fantastic Four become time displaced. They show up in ancient Egypt and they defeat him. This forces Nathaniel Richards to then travel to the 20th century, go forward in time, and he meets Dr. Doom, and he creates a armor based on Dr. Doom's armor, and that's where he kind of gets his special abilities, is through his armor.
Got it.
So he creates this armor from Dr. Doom, based designs of Dr. Doom's armor, and he becomes a character called the Scarlet Centurion. And his armor can do all kinds of things, like it gives him the ability to travel back and forth in time. It has like a force field. It can project energy blasts from it. So very similar to Iron Man, his armor gives him a lot of power. So that's one of the reasons why he has that power. He's then defeated by the Avengers as the Scarlet Centurion. He tries to go forward in time back to his original time in the 31st century, and something happens, and he unfortunately skips forward 1,000 years. So now he's in the 40th century.
Wow. And
Earth is completely war-torn and devastated. Well, he figures, hey, I can easily conquer this war-torn, devastated Earth. And so that's where he creates this persona of Kang the Conqueror. He conquers that version of Earth, and decides at that point in time, well, this version of Earth's not really good because it's all war-torn and battered, and I need a more fertile version of Earth, so I need to go back into the past and do that. So that's where Kang the Conqueror came from. Eventually, you heard this story before, he goes back in time to save his 16-year-old self from being hospitalized. So his 16-year-old self eventually gets hospitalized, and so he went back to save himself when he was 16. And that 16-year-old version of himself finds out, he's like, I'm Kang the Conqueror, you're going to eventually become me, but I'm saving you now, and so you can become me in the future. And he steals Kang's armor and travels to the 20th century and forms the Young Avengers and says, I'm not going to become this evil version of myself and conquer realities. I'm going to be a good version. And so as a 16-year-old kid, he forms the Young Avengers as Iron Lad and eventually kills Kang the Conqueror when he comes to confront him later on in the storyline of Young Avengers, but then finds out that by killing him, it screws everything up, so then he jumps forward in the future to become Kang the Conqueror anyway. So that's kind of what happens there. Crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. Yeah. But where I was going with the TVA...
There's no way the MCU is going to go there.
Where I was going with the TVA... There's a future version of Kang the Conqueror. So after Kang the Conqueror's done all these things he's done, traveled back and forth in time, conquered worlds, done all things, fought the Avengers, Fantastic Four multiple times, all these things, he eventually gets tired. He's like, this is just stupid. I'm just never winning. It's just dumb. I don't know what I'm doing.
I say that a lot. I get that, especially when I'm doing housework. This is stupid.
So he gets contacted by the timekeepers, and they say, we're going to offer you a deal. We would like you to regulate or police over time instead of trying to conquer it. And in exchange, we're going to give you immortality. And he thinks about it. He's like, you know what? This is better than what I've been doing lately. He said, sounds great. And so he then becomes the the purveyor of time for the timekeepers, and he creates this character called Immortus. So Immortus is who runs the TVA, and ultimately becomes the steward of the dimension Limbo, where the TVA sits.
Yeah.
And so that version of Kang the Conqueror runs the TVA for the timekeepers, and it's a character called Immortus. So my theory now, with all of this that I explain, and again, I'm sorry, listeners, this is incredibly confusing. We know Kang the Conqueror is coming in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Yes.
Is it possible that a version of Kang the Conqueror is either involved with the TVA, the current version, or a future version of him, or is this where Kang the Conqueror gets created, or how it gets set back in time? We don't know, but I would not be surprised if Marvel's using this series to set that character up as a big bad for the Ant-Man and the Wasp movie. Yeah.
I can only hope. And also Doctor Strange, the
Multiverse of Madness. Right.
He's got to play part in that as well. So
Right.
yeah, that'd be cool. I mean,
so we'll see. But again, this is a very confusing and complex character. I think
so confusing.
I
so
think
complex.
the Marvel MCU is going to be using the Kang the Conqueror kind of armored version as a, somebody who's manipulates the timeline, and maybe manipulating the quantum realm to kind of for his own purposes, and they're going to have to fight against him. Could there be some future version of that character that's running or involved with the TVA? Maybe, and maybe we'll find out in the series.
Or maybe not just Kang the Conqueror, but Doctor Doom is introduced in one of these shows, because we know we got the Fantastic Four.
He's got to come to the MCU.
He has to.
I would love to him to be introduced
How cool
outside of the Fantastic Four.
Me too. I absolutely agree with you. I think that would be fantastic. And I also think what would really be cool is that the Fantastic Four movie that comes out isn't an origin story.
No.
It is, they already exist.
Just like they would do with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Exactly.
Just like they did with
exactly.
Spider-Man Homecoming.
That'd be
He
great.
already had his powers. We didn't need to see him get bit by the spider.
Let's do an origin story down the road. But right now, let's bring in Doctor Doom, the big bad, and then let's already have the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
I think that'd be
we
so
already
cool.
know who they are. You don't need to explain it again.
we did a whole show on it. So
Right.
awesome. That's a great topic of the week. And it's so timely, and it helps people understand like what's going on and what's in the future.
Now, did you mentioned some questions we had? Did we answer all the questions we had this week? Already?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. All of them.
All right.
Yeah. Very good. I hear a bell.
All right. Cool. Well,
Professor.
That's it for us this week. We'll be back next week for more Super Talk. To get in touch with us on social media, you can email us at supertalkpodcast@outlook.com or at supertalkpod on Twitter. Until then, stay super, everyone.
And we're out.
And we're out.
56 minutes.
Well, that's what, 3 straight weeks under an hour?
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's not bad. That's pretty good. Thanks, you two. Please subscribe. We really appreciate you hanging in there with us. I hope we answered some of your questions. And if you have any more questions, add them to the comments below. And I promise you, me and the professor, Titanium and the professor, will take care of you. We don't ignore YouTube questions, okay? Thank you so much.